Hi, I'm Doug Oster from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Welcome to Digging with Doug. And guess what? We're waiting on the rain again. But when things stop, we're going to be talking about getting rid of all those summer pests. Until then, I'm coming back inside before I get hit by lightning. Well, the rains have stopped. That was quite a storm. And as I said, we're going to talk about dealing with bugs in the summer garden. They can be a problem. And the number one thing, and you've been seeing it all year long, is actually improving that soil, getting those plants so that they're outgrowing the pests. When they're growing in soil that they don't like, that's when the problems happen. When they're struggling, the pests can devour them. So let's go into the vegetable garden, take a look around, see if we can find any bugs and some solutions to those bugs. Well, the first order of business is figuring out if these bugs are actually bad for the garden. You're going to need some kind of book to tell you that. This is a great one. It's called Good Bug, Bad Bug by Jessica Walliser. And it's got all the major bad bugs and all the major good bugs in here so you can identify them. So many times people come up to me and they say, oh, I've got a bug in my garden. What am I going to do? Well, it might be a good thing for the garden. That's what you need to figure out. In this garden, we're all organic. We let nature take care of the plants, and it works. I've never sprayed anything in this garden, and I have a great harvest. But sometimes nature won't take care of everything, and that's when we need to reach for our organic solutions. So let's go take a look at those. All right, the reason we're not using chemicals in the garden is if we were to use a chemical pesticide on an insect, yes, we'd kill the one we wanted to kill, but we'd kill lots of other things too. We'd ruin that cycle of nature. We'd also be destroying things underneath the ground that we want to be there, that have a symbiotic relationship to keep our garden going. So we have some organic products here that we can use on the pests. And let's first talk about Japanese beetles. That seems to be the #1 pest this time of the year. And you've seen these beetle bags hanging everywhere? The only way you want one of these beetle bags in your yard is if you've got about 5 acres and have it out on the corner near the neighbor's lawn, because this uses a pheromone or a sex lure to bring the Japanese beetle into the bag. It's going to attract beetles from all over the area into this bag. So if it's close to your garden, the beetles are going to go in here, and since it's a sex lure, the Japanese beetle feeds before it ends up into the bag. So you're getting more beetles. They're eating first, so beetle bag, not a good idea. This is a great product. It's called Milky Spore, and it's only affecting the beetles when they're in their grub state underground. You put this on once, it lasts at least 10 years. This is the way to go. If you've got the beetles already out in the garden, this is something called neem. This one actually is called bio-neem. It's an organic pesticide, comes from the tropical tree, the neem tree, and it will kill hard shell bugs, but it won't affect the rest of the environment. That's what we're shooting for here. We're trying to specifically target the insect we want to get rid of and nothing else. And this is one I just love. It's called Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew. It's from Bonide. It uses something called spinosad, and it's the first use that I've seen of spinosad. It deals with a lot of bugs organically. I mean, it kills bagworms, borers, beetles, caterpillars, codling moth, gypsy moth, loopers, leaf miners, spider mites, tent caterpillars, thrips, and more. That's a great one. The last thing I want to show you here is called insecticidal soap. This is great for things like aphids, spider mites, little insects, soft-bodied insects, and it works great, and you can use it on food crops, which is wonderful. There are some other controls that you've seen us use before, and let's go over and take a look at those. Do you remember earlier in the season when we had these cabbages covered with the floating row cover? Now they don't need it, but the ones that we planted just a few weeks ago, we're going to protect them from the cabbage moth by putting this floating row cover on. This works to keep a lot of insects away from the garden. We use this to keep the cabbage moth off all the different plants in that family: cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, collards. And it's something that stays on there almost all season until they get too big for it. But we can also use it for cucumbers, for squash, to keep the cucumber beetle off. It has many, many different uses. Now I got to show you one more thing on the tomatoes that's very important. Well, the one thing that gets these tomatoes about this time of the year are tomato hornworms, and I haven't seen any yet. But if you do find a tomato hornworm on your plants, the best thing to do is to take it off and actually snip it in half. But if that tomato hornworm has little rice-like sacs on it, then you do not kill it because it's been infested with a parasitic wasp. When those eggs hatch, they're actually going to eat that worm from the inside. And if you see those little rice-like things on the tomato worm, it has stopped feeding. By not killing that worm, we're perpetuating a parasitic wasp that will come back year after year. Now, to bring in the good bugs, like that parasitic wasp, we want to grow small flowering herbs like dill or basil, oregano, thyme, and other flowers too, to make this garden as diverse as possible and bring in as many of the good bugs as possible. Now remember, if you've got a question about gardening or about something we did on Digging with Doug, log on to www.post-gazette.com/homes and click on the gardening forum button. I'd love to hear from you. Do you have an idea for Digging with Doug? Log on there. Next week, it's going to be all about stuff in this garden, the weird stuff that makes it mine and could make it yours. But before we go, I want to show you this beautiful echinacea, double delight in the perennial bed. And today, definitely no watering.